An old, ragged man carrying a sack walked into bank and declared, "This bank is mine." The crowd laughed, and security advanced to escort him out, but when he opened the sack, everyone was shocked. Before we continue, please like this video and subscribe. It means the world to us. The afternoon sun cast long shadows over the quiet streets of Rockview, a small town in the estate with quiet streets, where nothing ever seemed to happen until that day. The doors of Chase Bank swung open with a creak, and in walked an old man, his face half hidden beneath the brim of a worn cap, his bent body carrying a heavy sack made of rough cloth over one shoulder. The fabric was stained by time and use. The few customers in the lobby barely looked up, while the bank workers behind the shiny counters shared small, knowing smiles. He looked like a man who might wander in asking for a few coins instead of making a deposit, but when he reached the center of the room, he lifted his head, revealing eyes that shone with a look that was hard to read, like strong hope or perhaps something else. "I am the owner of this bank," he said in a calm voice, even though he looked very weak. Silence filled the air for a moment before a small chuckle broke out, then another, while a security guard smirked. One of the clerks tried to hide her laugh, and even the branch manager, a man in a neat gray suit, shook his head with amusement. But their laughter would not last. Soon they would see that this was no joke. The laughter spread through the bank like ripples in a pond, as a young teller, no older than 25, leaned over to her friend and whispered something while trying not to grin too wide. The security guard, a big man with a badge that said Stephen, folded his arms and stepped forward. "Sir," Stephen said in a firm, heavy voice, "I think you are confused. Maybe you should sit down while we call someone to help you." The old man did not move. Instead, he shifted the sack on his shoulder and let it drop onto the marble floor with a heavy thud, a sound that made everyone stop laughing for a moment. "I am not confused," he said, his voice calm but strong. "This bank belongs to me." The branch manager, a middle-aged man named Amason Temb, sighed and stepped forward. He was used to dealing with upset customers, but this was something new. "Sir, with all due respect, I do not think that is possible," Temb said, giving a kind, patient smile, like one you might give a lost old man. "Do you have an account here?" The old man tilted his head slightly, his wrinkled face was hard to read. "Account? Son, I built this bank." A small laugh came from the crowd, weak and unsure. Stephen, the security guard, stepped a little closer, his hand near his belt. "All right, sir, I think it is time you tell us what is in the sack." The old man finally smiled, but it was not a smile that made people feel happy. It was slow and careful, a smile that held old memories and something else, too. He bent down, his fingers wrapping around the rough burlap, and when he opened it, the room changed. The laughter stopped, and a hush fell over the bank as everyone understood. What they had expected to be a pile of old junk, maybe a few coins, was not what they saw. Bundles of old, faded banknotes spilled onto the marble floor, thick bunches, wrapped in paper bands stamped with Chase Bank's first logo, a logo that had not been used for over 50 years. A dusty ledger came next, its leather cover cracked with age, the pages yellow but still whole. The bank manager, Temb, blinked as he looked at the notes. His mouth opened slightly, and his happy face faded. What is this?" he said, stepping forward. The old man gave a slow nod, as if he had been waiting for that very question. "Proof," he said simply, "proof that I built this bank, that I owned it before your father was even born." Stephen frowned but did not move. He was not a banker, yet even he could see that those bills were real. Temb swallowed hard, his mind racing. "That is impossible," he said, though his voice shook. "Even if you had money from long ago, it does not mean you kept the ledger." The old man interrupted, "My name is in there." Temb paused, then crouched and lifted the book with careful hands. He flipped through the brittle pages until his fingers finally stopped moving. His eyes looked at the old man in shock. "C.K. Kirby," he whispered. The old man nodded. "That is me." A woman near the counter gasped, and a man near the door muttered something quietly. The name was not new, it belonged to the very first founder of the bank, but that was not possible. C.K. Kirby had been gone for many years, thought to be dead. Temb shook his head. That cannot be you. C.K. Kirby would be over 100 years old by now. The old man's eyes shone. And yet here I am. A heavy silence filled the bank, no one laughed anymore. The weight of the silence pressed down on the room like a thick fog. No one spoke, no one moved, the only sound was the slow, careful flipping of ledger pages as Temb looked through the records, his face growing paler with each passing second. This ledger is over 60 years old, he started, his voice barely above a whisper. This ledger is by the old man C.K. Kirby, or so he claims. He let out a small chuckle, though it carried no fun. Older than that, son, he said, adjusting his stance. I started this bank in 1948 with my own 2 hands, and I ran it until the day they took it from me. Temb's head snapped up. Took it, Kirby nodded, his fingers tightening around the edge of the sack. They stole it, betrayed me, erased me. He swept his eyes around the room, landing on the grand chandelier, the shiny counters, the fine marble floor. They built this on my bones. Stephen cleared his throat. All right, this is getting a little crazy, he muttered, looking at Temb. Boss, you want me to call the cops? Temb didn't answer, he was too busy staring at the name in the ledger, the dates, the official signatures, the signatures that matched the framed documents on the wall behind him. C.K. Kirby was no myth, he was real. But if this man is him, that's not necessary, Temb said slowly. He turned his attention back to the old man. Mr. Kirby, if that's really you, what happened? Why did you disappear? The old man exhaled sharply, his lips pressed together as if holding back anger. I was betrayed, he said again, by my own business partner, John Williams. We built this bank together. He was supposed to be my friend, but greed does strange things to a man. One day, he had the papers changed, convinced the board I was unfit to run things, and just like that, I was out. My name was erased, my life was ruined. A murmur spread through the small crowd in the bank, but that was decades ago, a woman in the back whispered. Kirby nodded. I fought to get it back for years. I fought, but doors kept closing and people kept looking the other way. Then one day, I vanished, because that's what they wanted, wasn't it? For me to disappear? Temb swallowed hard. And now you're back. The old man nodded once more. Yes, I'm back. His fingers tightened around the sack again, and I'm here to take back what's mine. A chill ran through the room. Stephen shifted his stance, uneasy. All right, sir, I'm going to have to ask you. Kirby reached into the sack again. People gasped. A woman near the entrance took a step back. Stephen's hand flew to his holster, but when Kirby pulled his hand out, it wasn't a weapon he held, it was a stack of papers, yellowed, stamped, and signed, legal documents. Temb stepped forward hesitantly and took them from the old man's outstretched hand. His eyes moved over the text, and his face grew tighter with each line he read. Then he stopped, his hands trembled slightly. Oh my God, he whispered. What is it? Stephen asked, still tense. What is it? Temb lifted his eyes to meet Kirby's. These documents, he swallowed, they show that you never sold the bank. Kirby gave a small, satisfied nod. That's right. Temb shook his head in disbelief. If these are real, then look at the framed certificates behind me, certificates that bear the name Matt and Sons, the family that controlled the bank for generations, then this bank was stolen from you. The crowd murmured louder now. Kirby took a deep breath. I spent my whole life fighting to prove it, and now here I am. Temb straightened up, his mind racing. If the papers were real, and they surely looked real, then C.K. Kirby had a legal right to the very building where they stood, and that meant the true owner of Chase Bank was right in front of them. The people who had laughed at him just moments ago now stared in shocked silence, finally seeing the truth and beginning to feel sorry. The weight of the moment settled over the bank like a big, dark storm. Soft whispers filled the air, quiet voices mixed with worry and uncertainty. Tem's hands shook as he turned the old pages of the papers, his heart beating faster with each signature, with each official stamp that proved what it all meant. To him, the old man stood very still, his presence now very serious. He had come into the bank as a joke, a lost man from the past, thought to be just a confused wanderer, but now he was something else entirely, a strong force. The ghost of a long-hidden truth was showing itself in the shiny floors, the high ceilings, the grand chandeliers. Every part of the building was built on stolen dreams, a monument to lies. And the man who had been cast aside, forgotten, had come back. Tem sighed hard, his thoughts spinning. This was more than just an embarrassing moment, more than an old man with an unbelievable tale. This was a reckoning. If the papers were real, and they surely looked real, then the whole history of Chase Bank was a lie. The workers, who had once been amused, now stood very still, their eyes shifting between Tem and the old man. The customers, who had once not cared, now clutched their belongings even tighter, as if caught in something much bigger than themselves. The security guard shifted uncomfortably, his fingers still near his belt, unsure whether this moment required strength or caution. Outside, the world went on. Cars drove by on the street, and people walked past, unaware of the big truth coming out inside the bank. But inside, time felt very slow. The old man bent down and lifted a bundle of the old banknotes from his sack. He ran his fingers over the worn paper, as if touching the past, a past when he had once possessed wealth, power, and trust, only to have it all taken away. The heavy years sat on his shoulders, yet his hands remained steady. Tem felt his throat tighten. He had spent his whole career believing in the bank's history, its rules, its old ways. And now, that strong foundation was crumbling beneath him. A choice lay ahead. Would they speak the truth, fix the past, and make things right, or would they hide it again? The room stayed silent. Somewhere far away, a clock chimed the hour, and the old man waited. The air inside the bank had changed. The laughter had vanished into quiet silence, a soft understanding that something much bigger than all of them had just been revealed. The heavy truth of history pressed down in that marble room, a reminder of a wrong that was many years old. C.K. Kirby stood still, his face calm yet his presence strong. He had waited his whole life for this moment, not just to be heard, but to be seen. His eyes swept the room, taking in the signs of wealth, the shiny brass plaques, the heavy wooden desks, all on ground that had once been his. Tem swallowed hard, he knew what had to be done. His hands, still holding the papers, felt as though they carried the whole history of the bank. He turned slowly, stepping toward the back office. The board had to see this, and the lawyers would have to be called. But as he reached the door, he paused for a moment. He already knew how this would go. The bank's owners, the Matt family, would not agree. They would say it was a mistake, claim the papers were fake, and drag the matter through court for many years, hoping time would hide the truth once again. And Kirby, he might not have many years left. A soft murmur spread among the gathered employees. A few looked at each other, uncertain. Then, slowly, a young teller stepped forward. She bent down and carefully picked up one of the faded banknotes from the pile at Kirby's feet. She looked at it for a long moment before placing it on the counter, as if it was something very special. Then, as if that single act broke the heavy silence, another teller did the same, and then another. One by one, the employees moved forward, each placing a piece of Kirby's past onto the counter, his proof, his claim, his legacy. Stephen, the security guard, shifted his weight but did not stop them. His hand, once near his belt, now rested at his side as he offered a small nod toward Kirby. The old man watched in silence. He had no more words to say, no more battles to fight. He had come with nothing but the truth, and the weight of many years behind him. And now, for the first time in decades, he was finally being seen. Tem finally spoke, his voice quieter than before. "This isn't over," he murmured, more to himself than to anyone else. No, it wasn't over, but it had begun. C.K. Kirby let out a slow breath. He turned and walked toward the door, his steps measured and sure. He did not look back, he did not need to, because, For the first time in a very long time, he had won. As the sun dipped below the horizon in Rockview, a new chapter began for Chase Bank, a chapter built on truth, justice, and the courage to reclaim what was once lost. Thank you for watching. If this story resonated with you, sparked your curiosity, or challenged your view of the past, join our community, hit like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments below. Your voice matters, and together, we can unearth more hidden stories waiting to be told.